Good evening, everyone. Welcome back in the studio. Baruch Hashem. So, welcome to the Thursday night class. This is going to be part 2 of the discourse we began learning last week in Shir Hashirim in the end of Likkutei Torah. Page 88 is where we're holding. Daf Mem Dalid Amid Dalid is where we're holding. We were learning the verse. We connected it to last week, where last week it discusses the whole story of the reunification of Yosef and his brothers. And there's a verse in the Song of Songs in which we say, Yetencha Ke'ach Li, if only God, you will be like a brother to me. Yoinek Shteimi, who nurses from my mother. Eshakech, I will give you to drink meyayin arekach, from spiced wine. And me'asis rimoinai, from my pomegranate juice. And then we say, Emtza'acha b'shuk, and b'chutz, I will find you. This is what the bride says to the groom in the Song of Songs. It's a love song. Emtza'acha b'chutz, I will find you b'chutz outside. Eshakech, the word eshakech, I will kiss you. Oh, I forgot. This verse, this is part of the verse that says before. After it says, I will give you to drink, it says, Haviyeni, I will bring you al cheder imi, to my mother's chamber. Al beis imi, to my mother's house. Uslamdeni, and you will teach me. And then it says, Emtza'acha b'chutz, I will find you outside. Eshakech, I will kiss you. Gam lo yavuzi li, they will not either shame me or they will not continue to rob me. Obviously, you need commentary on what this means, but we're learning the deeper inner explanation of this as this refers to our souls and our connection to God. In last week's class, we were learning that when we say, if only you can be our brother, is because we do find that the relationship of the Jewish people to God, in addition to being like children to a father and like subjects to a king or like a wife to a husband, it's also a relationship of siblings. In that case, we would either be the brothers of Hashem or we would be considered his sister. And he is our brother. So what is the significance of brother? So he began to explain that there's two types of souls, the two types of service, of worship to Hashem, of connecting to God. One is the service of the tzaddikim, the saintly people, and the other one is the service of the Baalei Tshuva, the penitents. He introduced the discourse right in the beginning by bringing sources. Which one is superior? Which one is higher? There are sources that say that being a tzaddik is greater. Like it says, when God consulted whether to create or not create the world, he consulted with the souls of the righteous, of the tzaddikim. Being that that's the case, it implies, it doesn't say that he consulted with the souls of the Baalei Tshuva, of the penitents, of the returnees. On the other hand, the sages tell us, the place that the Baal Tshuva, that the penitent stands, even the perfect tzaddik can't stand. So he said, which means that they both have a certain quality. The tzaddik has a certain quality that the Baal Tshuva doesn't have, that the penitent doesn't have, and the penitent has a certain quality that the tzaddik doesn't have. We last week learned the quality of the tzaddik. What did we learn? So we learned that tzaddikim are called tzaddikim, which means saintly, but also means the righteous. From the word tzedek, righteousness, tirdof. And the root of it is really, the word is tzedakah. Tzedakah means charity. And the reason why tzaddikim are called tzaddikim is because their business, they're occupied their entire life in either doing charity or in doing all the other mitzvahs which have the same nature and the same spiritual effect like charity in the general. And what is that? The notion of charity means to bestow and to give to the one that doesn't have, the one that's lacking, and therefore, in front of God, everybody's lacking, and the world's, especially down below, is lacking, is in darkness, is lacking divine revelation. And the work of giving tzedakah spiritually, when we do tzedakah down here below, in the material world, when we do tzedakah, Matzah Shabbos this past Saturday night, we had a Malava Malka, a special Saturday night meal to accompany the Queen, and we spoke about Remichel of Zlochev. So I said a lot of stories, and this is one that I forgot to say, but didn't come out, so I'll share it with you now. That his wife was once having a hard time with their state of poverty. My son-in-law alerted me to the fact that Ramichel in the end of his life he asked me, is it true that Ramichel in the end of his life, in his later years, became pretty affluent? I don't know the story of how, but yes, I did read that his poverty was in his earlier years, and then he became pretty wealthy. What exactly it was that brought him his wealth, I don't know. So things improved for the family. It's nice to hear. But in any case, his wife was having a pretty rough time, and she complained that how come this is our lot? So he said to her, I'm going to ask. It's a good question. She says, you're right. Let me check in with my sources. So he checked in up there in heaven. He used to ask questions and communicate. And he got an answer. The answer they told him was that he's poor because God set up the world that there has to be rich and poor. There can't be a world where everybody's rich. And the Midrash, and he brings a Midrash, where the Midrash says that once there was a city, a country in which they decreed a certain what you might call it, a new why can't I find the word? A new style of life, of a new setup. The king decreed that all the monies of the kingdom have to be equally divided. A form of communism. Everybody's going to be equal and fine. There will be no rich and poor anymore. And okay, everybody was happy. And it was like great because there was no poor people. But then in the end, what happened was there was no one, the garbage started piling up. And garbage. It was terrible. And the stench, it was impossible to live there. Because what happened is, since everybody had equal status, no one wanted to do the lower jobs. Cleaning, taking out the trash. And being that in this world there are all kinds of jobs that need to get done, the Midrash says. So God made those that are richer, those that are poorer, and the poor need to do different jobs, and the rich, everybody has their role to play. This is the Midrash's explanation that there has to be higher rungs of society and the lower rungs of society. So everything is able to be tended to. So he basically said, since there needs to be rich and poor, so we're from the poor. So she said to him, but I don't understand. How come we ended up on the poor side? If there has to be rich and poor, why can't we be from the rich? And how did we end up that my entire life I'm on this side of the aisle? He says, I'll check. So it's interesting. The same thing is the story with the Rebbe Marash. He said a whole mimer once, that the poor man has a complaint. Yes, there has to be rich and poor. The reason we learn in the mimer there has to be rich and poor so that people can give tzedakah, that the world stands on tzedakah, so therefore on charity. So that's why there has to be rich and poor. But over there it says that the poor man's cry is exactly what this woman is saying. Good for the world there should be merit in the world. There has to be givers and receivers. But the poor man cries out, why do I have to end up with the lot as being the receiver? That's the Tefillah La'ani Maimer. We once learned the whole discourse on it. But he said he's going to check. So then he checked again. He came back to her and he said, well, I'll tell you what it is. the money, the source of the hashpa, of the influence, doesn't want to go down, it only wants to go up. So if we would be the ones who are given the money as the rich people, and we would have to give it to the poor, that would mean that the monies coming from us would go to a much lower state. I mean, that's the whole point of tzedakah, that it goes to a lower place. But we see he meant spiritually that if he's rich, then the money who's in the hands of the tzaddik and the righteous person is going to be given to the poor. And the poor is not going to be on the spiritual level of Ramichel of Zlachers. So the monies are going to end up having a yerida, going to have a descent, not an ascent. They're going to go down. So therefore, since the money wants to have an aliyah, so therefore it goes first for the rich people that are really in a much lower spiritual level than us. And then from us, it goes up. The monies are happy because they end up ascending high. So I guess all the more reason that she should be happy that her husband is a tzaddik. If her husband wouldn't be such a tzaddik, then maybe the money can travel down. The money can travel to them, from them to others. But he's a big tzaddik, so what can she do? That was the answer he gave. Just thought it was interesting. In any case, what we're learning over here, the main primary idea of tzedakah is that you're bringing down life to a place that's lacking. And therefore, that's what all the mitzvot do. They bring God down, and they bring about what we learned last week is called dira b'tachtainim, a dwelling place in the low. And in the words of the Alter Rebbe, this is the classic Alter Rebbe's teaching, that, which we learned in hundreds and hundreds of discourses, that creation on its own is considered very, very, very nothing to God. Creation on its own, as it says, Marabu Masecha Hashem, with all the multitudes of creations. And when we say multitudes of creation, we don't only mean the billions and uncountable amount of different creatures that there are in the plant and in the insect world and the animal world and in the mineral world. It's endless. It's endless. And how many stars and galaxies, and it's not countable to be able to appreciate the vastness of creation. But we also mean how many is that that our creation exists on multi-levels. And those multi-rungs, multi-level means everything existing on a lower world exists also in a higher realm, in a more spiritual way. And in that higher world, it exists even in a more higher world, in a higher level. And so it goes high and high and high and high. Yet we're learning, and notwithstanding the multitudes of levels which go into the billions of worlds that are stacked up on top of each other, no matter how high you go, to the unimaginable sublime levels, they're all b'chachma asisa. They're considered just an action. Why are they considered just an action? Because just like we explained last week, that a single action that a person does has very little intelligence and inner human in an external action that a person does. Last week we gave an example, especially when a person is doodling, or when a person could be deeply involved in something, and matter of factly, they could be, smudging a paper, a little piece of paper. Like, what of their true self, of their higher being, is going into this action? It's nothing of them, although they're doing it, but there's no substance of the quality of who they are that's to be found in that action. In that sense, notwithstanding the fact of how unbelievable the creation is, and how completely mind-blowing even the tiniest creatures are, let alone the cosmos and the supercosmos and all this. It's like, it's crazy. Yet all of them together is not even it doesn't have anything of God. It's nothing. But that's the way it is on its own. But then Hashem wants to have a home in this world, which means he wants to come down entirely into this world, into this nothing of an existence, created with nothing of his light. He wanted us to invite him in so that he can fully manifest his entire self into this world. And last week, and how does that happen? That charge was given to us. That charge was given to us that we can bring him down in a way that he should actually insert himself into this world. And he does throw in the three stages. Creation is divided primarily in three primary ranges: creation, formation, and action. Bria, Yetzira, Asiya, or creation, formation, and completion, which is the material world, our world, the lower world, and which correspond to thought, speech, and action. So we were learning last week, that we have the ability to align our thoughts with God's thoughts, and to align our speech with God's speech, and to align our actions with God's actions. And what we and therefore, when we open ourselves, when we open our minds up, our thoughts up to think God's thoughts through the understanding of Torah, and to speak God's words through the speech of Torah, and to do God's deeds through the actions of mitzvahs, it's not only that we are doing something godly, but we are actually allowing God to enter into us, through us, manifest himself into existence, into creation. And that's the thought, speech, and action of mitzvahs. What's happening then? What's happening is that the infinite abstract God, who is infinitely above creation, is compressing himself into the universe, into the form that we are forming ourselves. We're creating the shell of it, and he's entering into we create the physical human, and our psyche creates the spiritual human vessel, and God manifests as a human. Now, we know that in Atzilus, God does manifest initially as a human, but a very, very, very infinite, beyond human, which we have no concept of. But Hashem doesn't even want to remain in Atzilus. Hashem wants to come down into the creation state. And that is when we study Torah, thought, speech, and action, bringing God down. He enters into complete manifestation into our world. And we learned last week, even though it says in the verse, Ki loi machshavosai machshavosechem, my thoughts are not your thoughts. So how in the world are we going to think his thoughts? How in the world are we going to speak his speech? How in the world are we going to act his act? Doesn't seem like something like this is possible. So that we learned last week that that's the continuation of the verse. V'loi derochem derochai. And your ways are not my ways. That's an explanation. That's saying, when are my thoughts not your thoughts? When am I infinitely above your thinking and your speaking and your experiences? When your ways are not my ways. But when your ways are my ways, like we learned in the beginning of the discourse, that's what tzedakah means. That's what a tzaddik means. These are the road builders who create derech havaya. Tzedakah is called v'shamru derech Hashem. Like Hashem says to Abraham, I love him. About Abraham, I love Abraham, because he's gonna command his children to observe the ways of God. Lasa tzedakah o mishpat, to do tzedakah. That means when we do tzedakah, we create a road for God to travel from beyond the cosmos into the cosmos. Not to shine his light. That's the most important idea, because the shining of the light happens without. That's at the time of creation. Hashem allowed a ray of his to create the world. That's not the point of it. It's allow God to get intimate with the world. Allow Hashem to infuse himself, his entire self, into the creation. So when are my thoughts and my speech and my actions infinitely above yours? When your ways are not my ways. But when your ways are my ways, which comes through, is the thing. It's not just enough to learn Torah and do mitzvot. One has to learn Torah and do mitzvahs like a tzaddik. And what is that? The what germinates everything, the seed of it all, what prompts it all, is first the feeling of absolute nothingness in front of God. In other words, when one recognizes how the self, and even if the self manages to accumulate great wealth, and even if you have everything in the universe, you still have nothing. Because the sum totality of all of existence is one big zero in front of God. Zero, literally zero. And then, so you crave, you want something real. And that's the craving of a tzaddik. So it's two things. It's the yearning, and it's also the God cannot dwell where there is a sense of importance. Where there is inflated self, God cannot dwell. Total antithesis to God is feeling the self-importance, the self. So, but once one recognizes the utter nothingness in front of Hashem, like we're learning also in our Hasidic discourse that we're studying now, in the Mashiach discourse, we're learning all about the levels of nothingness, which is going to go way, way deeper even than we're learning, than we're holding by now. So when a person, that's what a tzaddik is, someone who recognizes the meaninglessness of all of existence in front of God. So there is absolute humility. In that humility, there's now space. When you empty yourself out of self, you create an empty space. Now God can fill that space. And then when you're studying Torah, both in thought and in speech, and then in action, then one merits to serve as a funnel and as a channel through which the divine can manifest. Where? Through the channel of each and every one of us. And then God is called our brother. Why is he called our brother? For two reasons. One reason I saw in the Tzemach Tzedek, doesn't say those words in the Maimer of Yehencha Ke'ach Li Torah, but in the Tzemach Tzedek's discourse, in one of the lines he throws in, he says a few things there, but this is one of the lines. One of the lines are, because just like siblings, they live in one house. So until the Torah is given, and until Torah is given is not enough, until we activate the Torah, until the tzaddikim come in every generation and live a complete Torah existence, a Torah life, they hollow themselves out of self pursuits, and they live just to flow godliness into the world. So until that time, we live in planet universe. This is our residence. Like it says in the Pasuk, Hashamayim Shamayim Lashem, the heavens are the heavens to God, Va'aretz Nasan Libnei Adam, and the earth he gave to man. So humans live on earth. And when we say humans, I mean angels and everybody. We all live in the ranges of creation. And where is God? God is above the world. He's outside of the entire cosmic order. He's above, he's infinite, he's higher than everything. So we said earlier, to him creation is just a little action. A little mindless action is all of creation, everything that's in it. So we're not living in one house. We're not living in one residence. But when we draw him down to have a home in this world, so we share the same home. So we're siblings living in one house. We share the same bedroom. Really cool. That's one meaning of like being my brother. Or even deeper than that. He's being funneled into our thoughts through our thoughts, so we're like twins. To Umasi, we look exactly like him. Because our thoughts, our actions, and our activities are all the same. You see two twins, that are, especially if they're Siamese twins, the parents dress them the same. And you can't tell the difference. I still go to my sister's home in Crown Heights from time to time. I have nieces that are now over Bas Mitzvah, 12 years old. I go there. I've given up a long time. I have no idea which one is which. I say hi. I usually don't say their name because I won't know which one. It's embarrassing for me. But this happens. They look very much the same. I have no idea. So, and they're always together. They're always like, they're locked together like this. It's really cool. I guess the parents could tell the difference, but I can't. But in any case, when we look exactly like God, he's coming through us. We're thinking his thoughts. We're acting his thoughts. He's our brother. We're equal. Okay. This is a summary of what we learned till now. Now let's continue. But we don't just say me Yetencha Ke'ach Li, who will give you to be like a brother. Now, here's the thing. When was the time that we were the most, God was like a brother to us to the biggest degree? The time that this was, the time the temple stood. Because then the Jewish people were fully tuned in. And there were many tzaddikim channeling God. And God was in a state of manifestation into the world. The time of exile, we're going to see about that later, God withdraws back into the infinite. He's not so much in a manifest presence in the world. So that's why we're wishing, if only you can be again like our brother. Be present in this world. We can tap you through seeing you in your Torah, in your will. God is flowing. The channels of the divine are flowing into the world. But now let's understand, what does it mean? Yoinik shtei imi, who nurses from the breast of my mother. V'zeo yoinik shtei imi, who nurses the breast from my breast of my mother. Hu al derech mashal. This is by way of analogy. Kamoi al yedei ayanika nizgadol avlad. Just like through the nursing, what happens to the child? The child grows. In the 24 months of the nursing, we find that a baby grows during the first 24 months of nursing. The baby, I'm not sure exactly, but I would imagine that a baby quadruples its size in the first 2 years. There is no period of growth in a person's life that is equal. That level of growth that you grow in the first 24. The expansion of the human body is the quickest and the fastest, the most expansive time in a person's life, physically and probably psychologically as well. When you learn the most, when you double your intake, your quadruple your experience in such a short period of time, you learn most of the things when you're such a little, and then later it's just slow growth. The growth slows down, physical and mentally. The growth is much, much less. But then it's like super growth. And that has to do with the mother's milk. And the growth that happens through the nursing is not in any way comparable to any other period in the rest of the years of a person's life. So now we're talking about God coming down and being born as our little baby brother. In other words, we are living here first, meaning he placed us here. Now we want to invite him into the world as a human. When we invite him into the world as a human, I don't mean as a physical human being, but God becomes in the image of human through his Torah. Torah is in the shape of a human. There are 613 commandments which are made up of 248 positive commandments corresponding to the 248 limbs of a human, and 365 prohibitive commandments corresponding to the blood vessels and arteries in a human. And that's why the Zohar refers to the mitzvot, the commandments, as the 248 limbs of the king. Because prior to the mitzvahs, God is completely in the abstract, utterly unknowable, undefinable. But he lowers himself down to have a presence in the world, in the Torah. The Torah is God's psyche. But the Torah is God's psyche pertaining to investing himself into a world. God has likes and dislikes, just like the human psyche. We have likes and dislikes, all kinds of complex emotions, things that trigger us like this and things that trigger us like that, things that we areas of our compassion, things that we're passionate about, things that we're disgusted of. Through the Torah, we draw God into a manifest person within the universe. And he has things that he really loves and things that he really hates and despises. And we bring him into a state of compassion and caring and into a full-fledged manifest relationship, not above the world, but being present in the world. So the first thing is to bring him to a state of connection. Now, to bring God into a state of connection from total abstraction into being born into the universe, that we do primarily through prayer, not yet through learning. It's explained in Chassidus and different Maimarim that we learned that through the Mesiras Nefesh, through the experience of prayer, and the soul is experiencing the dissolving, when the soul dissolves into the oneness of God, related to what we learned earlier about the soul recognizing that all of existence is naught and nothing, just a zero, literally nothing, not figuratively nothing, literally nothing. And when we say nothing, as much as we imagine nothing, just amplify that 1.5 billion times more nothing, and that's just a limited number. So as much nothing we can now imagine how nothing the universe is, we don't even begin to understand even a tiny bit how nothing, because we're thinking, oh, come on, the universe is like, oh, it's awesome, it's crazy what's there out there. So say it's kind of, because it's a little bit like nothing. No. Any nothing we know of is not the nothing that we're talking about. We don't even have an example of nothing to the level of nothing that we're talking about. Zero nothing. Oh, and if this is the case, so when we realize that, and the soul therefore wants to break free of living trapped in the nothingness and seeks to draw, if I know you are the true being, so come my way. We want to pull him down. We want to literally pull God into the world. That yearning and that total melting out of existence, that's what triggers the birth, the baby to be born. It's God to enter into the sphere of creation. But just like when a baby is born, it's undeveloped or it's tiny. The baby is there. It has already a full potential, but it needs the nursing period. And the nursing period is going to bring an expansion to open up all the limbs and to develop them to a full, that the little scrunchy little, compact baby should become a little menschele, which means a little human being. And then once you finish nursing, you're already a human being. Then you grow, but you're already a full-fledged human at 2 years old. But before that, when you're a little tiny baby, of course you're human, but it's too compact. Then it develops, and everything comes into manifestation. So here is the next job. After we bring God from beyond the universe down into a manifest presence, into the human state, which are the sphirot, the attributes, infuse him into the attributes, we now need to cause expansion in the attributes. And how do we do that? We need to bring God, so to speak, to nurse from his mother. So what does that mean? God is nursing from his mother. Who's God's mother? So when we say God is becoming human, primarily we mean we're bringing Hashem down into an emotional structure. The main skeleton, let me explain something. The main skeleton of Torah are the 6 orders of the Mishnah. All of Torah is built around the 6 orders of the Mishnah. Because the Mishnah is the root of Torah Shabbal Peh, of the entire oral law. The Mishnah has 6 sections to it. Those 6 sections are really a description of God's 6 emotions. One is the emotion of kindness. The other one is the emotion of judgment. The other is the emotion of compassion. The other is the emotion of victory and perseverance. The other is the emotion of glory. And the last one is the emotion of foundation. These are 6 emotions which make up the universe, the 6 directions of the universe. But in the Torah, it's not creation emotions, it's God's emotions. And simply, what is the Mishnah telling us? It's taking you on a tour of God's psyche. You're getting to see what he likes, what he dislikes, what he is fond of, what he's not fond of, what he approves of, what he doesn't approve of, what he thinks is cool and neat, and what he thinks is horrible and disgusting. That's basically kosher, not kosher, pure, not pure, guilty, innocent, permitted, prohibited. These are all divine emotions. So the main human, and that's what it means to live with someone. You know, when you live with someone in marriage, for instance, it's not chavrusa. It's nice to have to study as well. The intellect is not the place where the main relationship manifests. It's the emotions. To your spouse, you have to care what your spouse likes and dislikes. Very, very deeply. You have to tune into each other's emotions. If it's the one place you're allowed to be open with your emotionally vulnerable and open in your emotions is with your spouse. That's the space of the relationship. So when we're talking about bringing God into the human condition, it means developing God's emotions. Now let's think about a child. When a child is born, they have a certain essential character, which is certain, elements in which the type of person that they are. But and every person is different. Some people are going to be very loving people. Other people are going to be very disciplining and very judging type of people. Other people are going to be very compassionate. Other people are going to be enormously go-getters and persevering and stubborn. Others are going to be very submissive. Others are going to make very deep connections and bonding, which is the idea of foundation. And all of us have all these emotions, but the question is the blends and the so forth. So every person immediately when you're born already has a certain disposition in essential character. But it's the child rearing and it's the exposure of what you get exposed to and the people you're around and the education and the parents, which are going to help bring it all out into a full-fledged, rich, emotional, structured human being. Certain negative emotions need to be nipped in the bud. Certain things need to be restrained and hopefully diffused and de-energized, and energies need to be channeled to shape and to form the child. But what we understand is that the potential emotions that are there, they're already there. It's like in the micro, there's already a whole full human being there, but it's the 24 months of that a mother takes care and nurses the child that really opens the child up like a flower. And it grows and it blossoms. The emotions blossom. So the same is with God. We want to get God involved and very manifest and we want God to have an opinion about everything so that he can fully live over here. Not that God says, I'm God, I don't care. So what do you care? What do you care if what's going on in my kitchen? If I have this, I couldn't care less. I'm God. I'm so high. What do I think I care about your spoons and knives and the milchiks and the fleishiks and the milk and the dairy and the meat? And I think I care about about what's going on in your wardrobe, or I care about what's going on in your business. I couldn't care less. I'm like God. I'm infinitely above it. That's not him having a home in this world. That's not him being invested. Him being invested is we want him to have an opinion about everything. We don't really only want him to have an opinion. We want him to be emotionally fully engaged and involved. We want God to be pumping with us all day long. I love that line. Pumping with us all day long. That's what we want. God's passion should flow. Wow. What kind of universe is going to be when the infinite is literally involved, invested, engaged in everything that's going on, not withdrawn. When God is withdrawn, the whole world is lethargic. Everything is 3/4 dead. When Mashiach comes, we're not going to believe what kind of pumping world it's going to be. What kind of energy we're going to shoot out of bed in the morning. We're going to I promise you, you're going to almost hit the roof. The moment you wake up, it's you're going to have to hold on to your bed, not to fly and hit the roof. Because the energy is going to be pulsating. Everything. Hello to people is going to be full of hello. The love, when you meet someone, you hug them, you'll hold on to them for 10 minutes, not leaving go, because you feel love. You feel alive. You feel, when you see compassion is with the intensity of the compassion. We'll all be a little crazy with Mashiach, but it's not going to be crazy because everybody's going to be pumping. Because the world is going to be pumping with powerful energy. Because God is fully invested and flowing in the universe in a manifest state. In that sense, we need to bring God to grow the baby. It's not enough that he touches down into the universe and the potential. I slightly have a little bit of a feeling towards this or towards that. We want the divine emotions to be open up and to flower. How does that happen? Well, the same way it happens to a baby. How does a baby? It nurses from its mother. So God needs to get milk from his mother. When we say God's mother, what does that mean? The emotional structure of God is called HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The mother, that's the emotions. Bina is the mother. Bina is the intellectual aspect. That's the source of the emotions. So what does it mean by God? We need Bina to deliver milk to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the divine human, for him to expand. So what does that mean? Well, Bina means understanding. So let me give an example. If you asked me about I don't know, let's say tennis. Or, yeah, tennis is a good thing. There are people that are huge followers of the sport of tennis. They know the players. They watch I think it's called the Open. I forgot what they call it. The this, the that. What are the tennis tournaments? What are they called? And they're fully have a lot of emotion in terms of who they follow, and they can't wait for it. And they spend money buying tickets, and they'll go drive on tennis and talk about football. How many people are who know all aspects of the sports of football in America? And soon is coming the Super Bowl. How excited people are! I have zero feeling for it. Zero. Why? Because I never invested my mind into it. I never gave it 5 minutes of my thinking. For whatever reason, it just never caught my attention, and I never opened my mind up to it, and therefore it never trickled down to my emotions. Sure, if I would read a few books on football or on tennis or on something like that, and I'll get a sense of the sport and the game, and I'll watch a couple of games, knowing all of this, I might get completely caught up in it. Yeah, there's a certain time I years ago that I followed baseball for a while, and I was very caught up in it. And I would sit an hour after I arrived home, and I would still sit in the car listening to the baseball game during the World Series. And I couldn't leave. I had to hear what's going on, because it caught me. I got emotionally invested in it. So I understand the concept, but I haven't given it my mind. So to feed the emotions, in order to feed the emotions, you have to put your head into it. And in this case, that's called the nursing. There has to be a flow of mother's milk, of bina milk, has to go down into the emotions and feed these emotions. So how do we get the bina? How do we get bina, the divine bina, to feed the emotions, the divine emotions, that God should take an interest in the world, in all the aspects of creation, so that this baby can grow, not be withdrawn, but engaged and involved? Well, we pump the milk. How do we pump the milk? When we study Torah. Torah is that intelligence. When we study the Torah, when we give when we're learning the Torah, so we're investing our minds into these subjects. And when we invest our minds into these subjects, God invests his mind into the subject. See, we're intrinsically bound up with each other. So when we put our minds into the subject of Torah, and God puts his mind into the subject of Torah, and we intensive. God is always thinking Torah, but we are increasing it a billion, because that's how he wired himself up with us. And as a result of that, we bring this milk to flow to nurse the emotions. And to develop the emotions. Now, there's something else to Bina. There is something else to Bina. In addition to Bina being the milk, and the milk is Torah Shabbal Peh, as he's going to explain. It's the oral Torah. And when we study it and when we learn it, we're pumping that flow of divine intelligence to support the divine emotions, to bring God into the human state, to bring God into an invested state into the universe. But Bina is also called Ema Banim Semecha. The mother of the children is joyous. That means Bina is the source of joy, of simcha, of joy. Like we know that when we discover something, we feel a thrill, but when we fully comprehend something, we feel joy. So when there is a full, rich comprehension of something, it makes us happy. Now, joy, which is attributed to Bina, has to have. See, what's one of the mother's main function for her child is nursing. As much as a mom takes care of her child after the nursing period, in a sense, if the mother, for whatever reason, is not there, God forbid, the husband, the father, can still take care of the children. It's a very, very undesirable state and very difficult, but it's possible. But for the first 2 years during the nursing, of course, today you have formula and all that stuff, but in concept, during the time, the mother is like absolutely pivotal during the first 2 years. That's when only she could contribute. The man can't nurse. The mother can provide the milk. So mother is Bina, and we said Bina is the source of joy. So there must be a connection with joy and nursing. Because that's the mother's role, and Bina is joy. Well, let's think about it. What does joy do in a person? What's the difference of when a person is kind of just simply living or when you're experiencing joy in your life. What does joy, what is it, the main effect of joy? The effect of joy is that it turns on the volume and the energy flow increases in a human being from a 2 all the way up to a 7 and 8. It's like when you're joyous, there's energy, you're pumping. We spoke about earlier about pumping. Joy is like, it releases energy. And what it does is it causes everything to expand. When there's no joy, the feelings, the emotions, the properties of the soul become clamped shut. And especially a depressed person, everything is suppressed in a depressed person. A regular person has some juice flowing, which means the feelings, they can feel. You can depressed, you don't feel much. You have emotions, but it's all suppressed. It's all shut down. When a person is a regular state, then you feel the emotions, but the volume is kind of toned down. When you're joyous, everything you feel intensely. Your love is intense. Even your hate is intense. Because there's an open heart. And therefore compassion is strong. Joy is like an opener. Well, that's exactly what the milk does. It opens up the child. So it seems like in the formula that mothers nurse their baby, they're nursing their baby with joy. We once discussed that really the root of the milk is real pleasure. Delight, she's nursing really, pleasure and joy go hand in hand. So it's a very pleasurable experience to the child. It's a joyous experience. And that's the reason psychologically it opens up the child and physically as well. And creates. In that sense, for us to bring God into a developed growth, especially if we want full-fledged expansion, investment, engagement of God into the universe, it's through studying Torah. But studying Torah with a tremendous joy. So there's different ways of learning Torah. You can have a daily study where you do it out of a sense of obligation. You feel as a Jew should learn Torah every day. You're tired, you're really not into it, you sit down, you force yourself. Like a lot of people do chitas. You got to do it. You can't go to sleep without doing it. So I'm going to read it quickly. And you got to do your Rambam. You got to do your learning. It's like things you got. And there's a lot to say about studying when you don't want to and you're not interested in doing it anyways. That has a certain quality, certain spiritual properties. It affects certain things, but not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the yeshiva guys. When I say the yeshiva guys, I mean the guys who have devoted their lives to studying Torah. And these guys go into the yeshiva and they sit there and they have such joy in probing the delicate aspects of Torah law, of it's like this and like that, and they argue with so much energy. And it says that you can look at their faces, you can think their life is dependent on these are hypothetical issues that'll never even happen in their lives, and they discuss it with such energy and say, go to whoever hasn't been in the yeshiva world. Got to see this in the yeshiva world. You have it in Lakewood, you have it in Israel, and Bnei Barak, and Torah study is their life. And there is a chayus, there is a life. These people are doing enormous things for the world. Because where there is the joy in the learning, and that simcha is causing above as well, God nursing from the infinite source of wisdom, of divine understanding, and that's flowing into like the backbone of the reasoning of why this is kosher, why this is not kosher, why this is permitted, it's the underlying milk that's feeding the emotions, that's creating super robust emotions in God. And God's emotions are kicking when God says it's forbidden or God says it's good, he really, really, with all of his passion and all his desire, wants the good and hates the evil. And then there's a full-fledged investment of God in the world. And that's the meaning. Not only who has made you be my brother, meaning you're touching down like in a vague connection to the world, but yoinek shteimi, nursing them from the breast of my mother. And again, that's dependent on our, just like making God be born in the world through thought, speech, and action. Torah study, as we discussed earlier, giving God an entranceway into the world, an investment into the world, is something that we have to do. And that's why the tzaddikim are called, they're called God's brothers. They're bringing him down, but they're also bringing it. It's like the big brother or the big sister bringing the baby. Amazing. It's like the big sister bringing the baby to the mother to nurse. And you had that by Moshe. How do you like that? By Moshe, it literally was that way. Yocheved, she had a little brother, and Moshe is the Torah, so it's really cool. So Yocheved is Miriam is standing there, and she says, "Should I go call you a nursing mother to nurse the baby?" And she's the one who brings the mother to nurse to the baby, Moshe. And she develops Moshe, the sister. So we're the ones who need to bring God, as he manifests at the level called HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to his mother for milk. And how do we do that? Through Torah study. That's the milk. But in order for milk to be produced, it's the pleasure and the joy that's in the Torah study. It's that there is this energy and this excitement to study, to probe what this passage of the Talmud says, and look in the Mefarshim, and look at the Rosh, and look at the Ran, and read the Rashba, and read the Ritva, and then see the Ramban, and the argument between the Rambam and the Ravid, and the Kesef Mishnah, and the Lechem Mishnah. The truth is, for those who really, once you get into it, there's nothing as stimulating as Talmudic study. It's really unbelievable. For people who make it their lives and get into it, it's so engaging. And it really captivates. It's so exciting. You have to be willing to work hard. It's not easy. It's intellectual work. It's brain work. It's a powerful. It's like being in the brain gym for hours a day. You're willing to pump your head, not get away easy with it. Sometimes you get stuck and you work it out again, and it hurts, and you get tired, and you don't want to exhaust your mind. You're exhausted, and then you come out with clarity, and boom, and there's such joy. It's nursing. It's nursing God into a full-fledged. It's unbelievable. Let's read it inside. Let's see again. Just like through nursing, as God lavlad, the child grows in the 24 months of the nursing. Which he doesn't grow during any other period of his life. And the growth that happens through the nursing is not at all within comparison to the growth in the other days of his life. The same is also so the same, now he's applying it to God, in order that there should be a revelation of Havaya, Yud K Vav K, which is the tetragrammaton, which is God's truth, not Elokim. Elokim is the droplet that he uses to create the world. No, Havaya, that God, as he is above creation, should reveal himself lamata, below, Vahainu. And how is that? From the initial state where God is above and beyond the world in a way where no thought can grasp him. So then he is outside of the universe, outside of the definitions of existence of creation. God is above the world. Stima the kol stiman, when he is hidden from all hidden, he's utterly removed and above. So we want that he shouldn't remain like that, because we want him to be involved, invested. Yishavali is hagdala. We want him to become big. And we don't only want him to attach himself with a small little attachment. We want him to become from a little baby a big boy. We want him to become fully grown up, fully emotionally developed. That he should reveal himself down here below. That our thoughts can be his thoughts, which means we want him to direct his thoughts into all the aspects of life. That he should have an opinion, and not just an opinion, he should have an emotional attachment and a feeling towards all that goes on in the universe. He should take an interest, and a deep emotional interest, and that he should fill our thoughts with his thoughts, and our speech with his speech, and our actions with his actions, because he should be present down here. And that's also the hint. So that comes from Bina. The mother is Bina. And he says it's also hinted to in the word me. Me, we know is gematria. The word me is the numeric value of 50. So it's referring to the supernal aspect of Bina, because Bina has 50 gates. Chamishim Shari Bina, the 50 gates of Bina. So the meaning of the verse is like this. The mother is responsible for two things. The mother, first of all, gives birth to the child. And then the mother has to nurse the child. So we say, me, the level of Bina, Yetencha. It's not the simple meaning of me, Yetencha. Who will give that you should be my brother? How can we get to that state? What can we do that should happen? That's the simple meaning. The deeper meaning, me, which is Bina, because Bina again is in Bina, there's 58, so 50, me is 50. Me, Yetencha. Me will place you, will give you, will take God from the unknown Ke'ach Li to be a brother like to me. Through the Bina, through the divine mind, because Hashem first manifests as a little tiny droplet into Chachma. From Chachma it goes into Bina. And Bina has to open God up like a flower. Open him up. Full, like the mother first develops the child in her womb. And then eventually she gives birth to him. These are the emotions of God being fully birthed, but the mother has to nurse these emotions. The level of me, which is Bina, is the one who does for me, calls that for us, for all of us down here, for the Jewish souls in the universe. We don't want to be alone. We want our brother to be with us. We want God to live with us in this world. So the little sister says to the brother, she says, if only I can have you as my brother down here with me. So who will do that? Mom will do that. Me, Yetencha. Because Bina is the mother of us, of the soul. She's also the mother of HaKadosh Baruch, of God's manifest as a. Now, one of the qualities of mother, he says, I like to read it at least. I didn't look these things up, these places. Where over there the Pirush is also not me Yekimenu, who will get it up, but me, the level me Yekimenu will stand it, will get her up. Me Yir Palach doesn't mean who will heal you, but me, the level me, Yir Palach will heal you. That's how the Zohar translates. Hashem mi yamod, like we say, Ki'imcha slicha, Lamanti vare. What's the word over there? Hashem shima b'kadim. Imavonos tishmarika, Hashem mi yamod. So the Zohar also learns over there, Adna mi yamod, not mi yamod. Aleph, Dalet, Nun, Yud, mi, together with Bina, yamod. That's what will stand. What's that? Well, over there as well, me will give. Not me yitain, who will give, but the level Bina, the level of me, which is Bina, will give. Now, the level called mother, who al derech mashal, the level called mother is by way of analogy, the concept of which it says in Psalms, the mother of the children is joyous. The quality of the mother is the quality of joy. When you take a look and you think about joy, what's joy? Joy doesn't create anything new. In other words, joy is not yesh me'ayin. It's not something from nothing. You see, Bina, let's understand it. Bina is not yesh me'ayin. Chachma is yesh me'ayin. Chachma is the first flash of an idea. There's nothing before that, and now something is born from nothing. What does Bina do? There's already a point of Chachma. There's already a concept. Bina fleshes it out. The same is also joy. Joy doesn't put anything new in the person. What joy does is whatever you have already, it expands you. It opens you up. It pumps the energy and it causes, like it turns the volume up. So everything is moving. Everything is much stronger. Everything is pronounced. The joy doesn't bring anything, no addition and nothing new. Hachayos of life. It causes the blood, the energy flow to flow in a more pumping way. At first, before the joy kicks in, things are kind of more subdued. And through the joy, nasa hispashtos. Through the joy comes an expansion. So that's the concept of Yetencha Ke'ach Li. Through the yoinek shteimi, to nurse from the mother means to add the joy into our Torah study. See, so far he didn't say anything about Torah study. He just said that the mother causes the baby to grow. He didn't say what. Later he's going to say that. I'm putting that in already here because it's a little. The other mimer, as I pointed last week, the one from in Mamare Admar Azakin is much more explained than this mimer. Here it's far more concentrated. So I'm filling you in, is that it's Torah study. And it seems like, again, my understanding is that it's Torah study with joy. It's not just learning Torah, but learning Torah with the joy. So you have the element of the milk is the laws of the Torah, the subjects, learning the laws of Shabbos, learning the laws of any type of laws of Torah. That's the milk. And as we study it, it's God learning Torah as well. The divine emotions, the level of HaKadosh Baruch Hu was also studying Torah from his mother. And he's studying joyously when we study joyously, and that causes the expansion. And that's the reason also why we continue. And she says, Ashakech, I will give you to drink. Meyayin arekach, from spiced wine. What does that mean? Another element of Bina, besides Bina being the source of milk, Bina is the mother, Bina is also the source of Gevura. And that's why wine is in the side of Bina. We learned the Levium, the Levites, they sing when they pour the wine on the temple, and they sing, and the singing is a Bina experience, expansion. It's a Gevura experience. So to add to this, what does wine do? Wine brings simcha. Wine brings joy. It's all on the same line. Milk, wine. You have it this week in the parsha. You have the blessing to Shevet Yehuda. He'll have bloodshot eyes from wine. V'leven shinayim, and white teeth mechalaf a milk. So milk and wine is mentioned in the blessings of Yehuda this week. They're both related to Bina energies. And they both have the quality of joy and expansiveness. So what does it mean? I spoke so highly of Lakewood and of Mir and this, but really you have to add Hasidus as well. Wine is the secrets of the Torah. The spiced wine. When you study the secrets of the Torah as well, that as well increases tremendously the joy. A lot of milk, you can have a lot of wine. One shot of wine, a little l'chaim, and boom, it like takes it to a whole new level. So mixing into the mix is not just learning Torah, the laws of Torah, but also the secrets of the Torah. All of this causes an amazing expansivity of the divine to be invested and engaged and involved in creation. Nichnas yayin yotzasoid, when wine goes in, secrets goes out. Again, something that was hidden and compressed comes out open. Gili alakus, which really means godly revelation, bringing godliness from a concealed, hidden, abstract state into a manifest, tangible, revealed presence. And this is the meaning where the Torah says, so you see the enormous effect the Torah has. in transmitting godliness into the world. The Torah, and obviously you need people to learn the Torah. It's the Jewish people with the Torah take God from above the universe and draw him into the world. That's why the Torah says, there's a verse in Mishlei and Proverbs where the Torah is talking about herself. And she says, Ve'eyeh shashuyim yoim yoim. I am, or I will, and I was, and I am. Shashuyim yoim yoim, God's delight. Day by day, I am God's delight. Misachekes lefanav. I entertain before him. God delights in the Torah. And then it says, V'shashuye yes b'nei adam, and I bring delight to people as well. Dahainu. What does that mean? Bei shashuyim. There is the more abstract shashuyim, the two shashuyim. I think the two shashuyim is what he says in the beginning. Shashuyim yoimai mesachekes lefanav is the Torah, where the Torah is completely in an utterly divine state above. Vayadei zenase his galus lamata, but this causes God, when God is besimcha, when God is joyous, when there is joy above, it causes him to reveal himself more into the creation. To manner. When there is a lack of joy above, then God too goes into suppression. Suppression means he becomes closed up into himself, withdrawn, and when he gets withdrawn from the world. And that's not what we want. We want him fully, and the Torah causes him to come out. The shashuye yes b'nei adam, that he brings delight into the world to people. And this is also the continuation of the verse which we say, I will lead you. Aviyachel beis imi, I will bring you to my mother's house. In other words, first we said it in general, that what? That me, the level of me, Bina, is Yetencha, brings God down into a state of Ke'ach Li, like brother to me. We cause God to touch down, to land into the world as opposed to being above it. And then Yoinek Shtayimi, and then we cause him to be developed into a full developed being within the cosmos, within the world. Giving him to drink spiced wine causes even a greater joy and a more of an openness and a more of an engagement. God is pouring his emotions into the world. And because this is the case, is what I want, I will lead you first to my mother's house. What is that? We said earlier that only through prayer, when we have that Mesiras Nefesh, when we say the Shema, is that reaches up beyond the universe and captures God from above and brings him into Chachma and into Bina. And that's the meaning. And first I will bring you al beisim into my mother's house. And then Tilamdeni, you will teach me. What's Tilamdeni, you will teach me? It's first landing God into Chachma and Bina, and then pulling the mother, Bina, to deliver the milk lower down into the emotional state. First, we got to bring him down into the headquarters of the universe, of the spiritual universe. To first bring him into the first two attributes, Chachma, and from Chachma into Bina. The B'chinas Ema to the mother Bina. And afterwards, Hamshacha Misham Lamata. And then we draw God down into the world, Mi B'chinas Imi, from the level of mother, Dira b'tachtain, and that he should come dwell in the lower worlds. He has to come down lower than Bina. That's through the emotions. He channels himself down into creation. Okay, Nema b'loshen tilamdeni, you will teach me. Ki imi, bringing him into the mother, hu b'chinas Torah shebeksav. It's interesting. Now he's adding in more. The mother's milk is the laws of Torah Shabbal Peh. It's the laws of the oral Torah. But all the laws of the Torah are produced by the written Torah. Bina herself, the mother herself, that's Bina, that's the Torah itself, the written Torah, the scripture. Scripture is Bina herself. Her milk that she's feeding her baby, the emotions, is the oral Torah, all the laws of the Torah. So that's what it means in Shir Hashirim, in this verse. It says, I will bring you to my mother's house, which means first God has to be brought down into the Torah. And once he descends into the Torah, into the written Torah, then we open it up to, because what is the oral Torah? Opening up all the details and sub-details, what are there hinted to in these primary laws. That's the development of it more. So first it's imi Torah shebeksav, usalam deini, and then you teach me who b'chinas Torah shebal peh. That's the Torah shebal peh. That's the oral Torah. So the order, what's happening over here is there's first prayer, and that causes the connection. Then you go, then you learn, you bring him into Torah by learning a little Chumash, learning scripture, which is a good thing always to learn the first thing. Learn a little scripture, learn the parsha of the day, and afterwards take him into serious Torah study. And when you take God into Torah, serious Torah study with joy, you're nursing the divine into a full, powerful, manifest, flowing, engaged, growing God as he is growing into the universe, into the world, taking interest, taking personal pleasure and passion and desire in everything that's happening within the world. Now, the people who do this, the people who accomplished this tremendous feat of pulling God down to a manifest state to have a home in this world, who construct, so to speak, a channel, a kind of almost like a body in which God can flow in, those are the tzaddikim. Because they're always doing God's will. They're always leading God into the world. They're the road builders. These are the tzaddikim, the righteous, shenikra achim. They're called brothers, Ke'ach Li, like a brother to me, keniskale, like we said earlier. Shekol avidasam, all of their service is milmayla lamata. All of the service is from up down. Lahamshich, to draw down, to pull down. Vehein mamshichim dirasai yizbarach betachtainim. And they're the ones who draw down God's dwelling in the lower worlds. They're the ones who bring down this dira for Hashem to come down into the worlds. Gababir inyan achaisi. Look and Rani v'simchi, yeah. V'ayma in Ke'ach Li b'Rabbis b'Shir Hashirim, Pasha Shemois, v'Bezori v'Yesha, Pasha Shemois, Me'in Anokcha, v'Evcha Beis Imi. Look in all these places, Pasha Pekudei, Daf Reish Nun Zayin, Seif Amud Beis. Okay. He says Ayin B'Hai Safis. Let me see if there's something that I missed. B'Hai Safis. This is... Oh, here he brings that in the actual handwriting of the Alter Rebbe, it says ubemedrash shir hashirim bepidish Ke'ach Li haina ki Yosef leBinyamin. So the Medrash says like Yosef to Binyamin, and now over here he makes the connection between Yosef and Binyamin and this idea. I don't know what it is. I'm not sure. Okay. Madrega Hashenis, and the second level. Remember, we said that the whole mimer is here to explain. So this is the quality of the tzaddikim. Chapter 1. Now we're going to learn chapter 2. As great as the tzaddikim have, the Bali Tshuva, the penitents, have a quality that in some ways is much greater than the tzaddikim. And what is that? The madrega shenis and the second level ubchin is bali tshuva. These are the penitents. And on this it says, the verse continues in Song of Songs, I meet you outside. I will find you outside. Eshakech, I will kiss you. Gam lo yavuzuli, they will not plunder me. They will not rob me. What does that mean? Kihine Baal Tshuva, because Baal Tshuva, which means people that have gone off and they have transgressed the Torah and the mitzvot, and they've sinned, and then at a certain point in their life, they suddenly become aware of how far they've wandered, and they turn their lives around and they want to connect back to Hashem. That's called the Baal Tshuva. But he's going to explain over here, you don't have to become a completely alienated from Judaism or from Jewish observance or violate the commandments intentionally or non-intentionally to be a Baal Tshuva. Even if someone who is all day learning Torah and doing mitzvahs can also be a Baal Tshuva. Because the notion of a Baal Tshuva is someone who feels distant. The main idea that he's going to explain now, tzaddikim, they live a life of continuous divine channeling, continuously attached to God. Brother, also in Hebrew, is the word attachment. They have non-stop attachment to God. They don't break the attachment. And that's wonderful, but it gets a little stale. Why does it get a little stale? Because a relationship in which there's nothing new, it's just continuous and continuous and continuous, is lacking a little sizzle. Even when it's God being your brother. The sizzle comes when there is a novelty. Excitement comes when there is a change. And that is when a person is able to make a transformation in their life. That's when it creates a potency, a certain burning. So usually people who live one way in their life, they live a certain lifestyle, they live in certain pursuits and in certain awarenesses, and suddenly they have this awakening. Something happens in their life, whether they're going through a midlife crisis or whether they experienced a shakeup in their universe, or whatever it is that leads them to a connection, to a deeper search in their life. And when they find it and they connect, there's a certain zealousness, there's a certain energy, there's a certain intensity that the tzaddik doesn't have. Because they feel that they need to run away from the far and they have to come back close. And that is going to explain, excites and triggers in the supernal source much higher than the tzaddik. The tzaddik is pulling God, but from a more external, he's reaching the infinite, the tzaddik, but from the more external element of the infinite. The Baal Tshuva, the penitent, because there is the distance, and there is the desire to overcome that distance, there is a potency, a depth, and a yearning coming from a more deeper. It's like an eruption. It's coming from a much stronger place within. The Zohar says the quality of the Baal Tshuva is bechela yatir. It's with added vigor. It triggers and it pulls God from a much higher place. It's also connected to the fact that the Baal Tshuva is transforming his dark side. Tzaddik doesn't have a dark side. And the dark side is related to the forces of Tohu. The tzaddik comes from the world of tikkun, which we discussed last night in the class I gave last night. I gave quite an explanation on the tikkun. Tikkun is it's a trickle of God's light. And if it's not a trickle, it's a much weaker channel, subdued channel. Tohu is the initial powerful, intense lights that shattered and end up in the dark elements in a person's life. So the animal vivifying soul, when it takes over a person, but then as something cracks and breaks and the person suddenly shifts over, the excitement is going to explain is more in the animal soul. because the godly soul really is never disconnected. Even when a person is sinning, the godly soul is quietly still connected. It's the animal consciousness that has gone so far that suddenly has this whole new shakeup, and it gets excited about. That triggers very high, very high. And that's why the Baal Tshuva reaches way beyond where the tzaddik reaches. The problem with the Baal Tshuva is because the Baal Tshuva is not consistent, he has these moments of intense awakening and fiery flashes. He shoots the fireworks, but he's not consistently living every moment in accordance to the in oneness, in synchronization with God. He has intense excitement, but not. Therefore, he shakes up a storm in the heavens above, but he doesn't channel it down. Creates commotions of explosive lights and triggers the excitement, but it doesn't have where to manifest. It's not dira b'tachtona. It's not a home in this world. A home in this world has to happen through the tzaddik. But the tzaddik is bringing from a more superficial level of God. So the only way to have the cake and eat it too is to have a tzaddik who becomes a Baal Tshuva. When tzaddikim will be Baal Tshuva, we're going to have both. That's where the Maimer is going to. We're going to have this intense yearning and this intense light, and it's going to manifest completely in the world. And that's Mashiach. That's where the Maimer is going. So let's read inside. Because the penitent is not only on sins, also on someone that gets separated and quiets down from his excitement. Meaning to say, even someone who prays every day and serious prayer and gets excited and wants an attachment to the infinite, to God, to the source, however, can't maintain that state. He's a businessman or a working person, or even if you're a righteous, a person who's a tzaddik, but still to a certain degree, you have to tend to your own physical needs. During the time you're tending to the physical needs, it kind of step away from the excitement. You're not focusing completely on the ultimate divine truth, which causes a certain dampening and a certain weakening. And when you realize what happened to me, where did I go? I went into darkness, and then you're returning, there is a sizzle there, which is not felt by someone who is just 24/7 connected. And when the person is in a state during the time that you step away from God, you're not in a state of excitement, of fiery attachment, because business people, they're not in a constant state of being attached to God. They set times to study Torah. So on them, that you can't say on them that they are channels 24/7 to God. They only set certain times to Torah study. When the person returns back from his engagement, from his involvement with worldly affairs, lilmod, to go back to Torah study, nikra tshuva. That's called tshuva. Because what does tshuva mean? Returning. And they're returning from being distant. Obviously, it also applies to someone who's, God forbid, taken their soul into the darkest corners of the universe through sin and the like. Of course, it applies to them. But you don't have to do that to be a Baal Tshuva, the Alter Rebbe says. The person is returning from the distracted state. They turned around to take care of their needs. Not bad. They had to take care of their needs. But during that time, they could not focus on the ultimate divine truth. But the quality over here is, so why did God set us up that way? That we have to separate. The Rebbe once explained in the talk, why is it that God set us up that we have to sleep? And the Rebbe's answer is the same answer like here. Because a constant attachment would never be the same. There has to be an interruption, and then there could be start again, and there's an excitement. But similar to this, it's you can see it's connected to this idea. So the reason God set up also that certain times we have to go away so that we can come back with extra vigor. And that creates a greater excitement. Yeser se'es, with added vigor. The words yeser se'es comes from this week's parsha. The blessings to Ruvain. Or rather, we should say the blessing rebuke to Ruvain. Yaakov says, you should have been greater than your brothers, but you're not because, and he says, yeser se'es, you should have had more than your brothers. Those words he uses. So over here, nasa goydelis paulus beyeser se'es, even more. The excitement when one opens up the Talmud, when opens up the Gemara, when one sits down to learn again after they've missed a couple of hours and they feel they've gone into silliness and now they're going back. Alter Rebbe had Hasidim who sat and learned 24/7, like all day long. And yet some of them had to go work. And those people, when they came back, they would run with excitement and grab the book open and throw it open and dive into it. The people that are learning all the time don't have such an excitement. If you would not have first worked in matters of the world. Because in truth, the angels are missing this. Because angels never fall from their level. And because angels never fall from their level, they're lacking the sizzle. Because in angels, then they stand they stand in the heights of the world. What does it mean that they are standing? Standing meaning they're stationary. They're always on one level. Because they never get distracted, they're always in a state of surrender to God. There's nothing to excite them. What should they change to? If they're already in a state of nullification, what are they changing to? Because excitement comes from change. When there is no change and there is a constant, there's no excitement. Where there is a change, that creates where there is a change of the substance of where you are, that creates the excitement. And that's the quality of why humans have over angels, because we do fall. We're not always. And everybody to a certain degree. Even tzaddikim can have moments of separation. But when a person is engaged in business, when you come back towards a communion with God, a person has a change of direction in which a person at first one was engaged and involved b'mila d'alma and worldly things, and then you turn around to run back to study Torah, especially when you know what Torah is, being channeling the infinite. Torah, to study Torah, there is an extra energy. There's an extra spice there. And even though the excitement is only in the vivifying soul, because the godly soul has always been attached. It's a godly soul. The main change is happening in the part of us that's more, gets verwandelt, gets verchapt, gets entangled. However, even though it's the vivifying soul, which is not the godly soul that gets excited because of it's been distant, but it's very high. Actually, it's higher because of the tohu element. And here he doesn't say so much that, but in the Tzemach Tzedek he added that, or the but there's another element, and it's all connected. The broken pieces of tohu end up in klipa and sitra achra, and including the animal soul, which is part of the other side, and gets caught up in the other side. And the sages say a very powerful state. The Zohar says that when the other side gets subdued to holiness, when the sitra achra, which means the other side, the side of darkness, bends and yields to holiness, it triggers God on a very, very high level. Istalik, so the Zohar says, Kadeskafya Sitra Achra. When the Sitra Achra is subdued, the Zohar says, here Chulu doesn't finish it over here, Istalik Yikara de Kutra B'richu. The glory of God rises in a very high level. Above. Simply it means it rises, means it goes farther away. It rises. The glory of God just rises. But the way Hasidism explains it is when the other side is subdued, is broken, or something is transformed from the dark side and gets pulled into holiness, that means the other side gets weakened and holiness gets stronger in a manner of something new. That is very entertaining. That causes a great thrill in the levels of the infinite. In the levels of the divine that are above and beyond the universe, usually not engaged, are usually completely outside, above taking an interest in the world. A deeper part on God, if so to speak. And that level is called istalik. It's removed from the world. Istalik means removed. But when we say now it's istalik, doesn't mean it becomes further removed. It means that which is removed now engages, now becomes engaged and involved. It takes an interest. It is drawn down. What does that mean? That a far greater, infinitely higher godly energy is now present in the world, is drawn into the creation. And all the worlds are illuminated with light that we've never seen. Balchuvas are the ones who trigger these intense lights. Tzaddikim don't do that. Tzaddikim pump the normative channels. Because they're not fighting so much darkness. They're no more converting. There isn't the subduing of the other side so much. The Balchuvas, those who allow themselves, and which again, according to the Alter Rebbe, we don't have to talk about extreme Balchuva, extreme sinner who does tshuva. Of course, an extreme sinner that becomes a Balchuva. Rebbe Lazar ben Derdaya, the Tzemach Tzedek in the Maimer, that there's a commentary on this discourse, says, when it says the Balchuva is greater than biggest tzaddikim, Rebbe Lazar ben Derdaya, who passed away after he sinned every sin in the world, and he started crying, and he died that way from his crying, and he's weeping. The Tzemach Tzedek says, who is he greater? From Abraham? And the Tzemach Tzedek, yeah, he's greater than Abraham. He's touching higher lights than Abraham. Avram was a tzaddik. Imagine, higher than, when we say greater than tzaddikim, we mean even higher than Avram Avinu. In terms of triggering like the deepest lights, because a whole lot of darkness was converted then. When the other side is subdued, it arouses in that very high place from what does he explain? From that which was initially in a high removed state. And the glory of God that is elevated above. What does that mean? From that level of God where God was removed from the universe and the creation, that is triggered and drawn down. It's like where it says in the Zohar that in the time of exile, God retracts and removes himself from the world to be above the world. As we said, the time of the temple, God is more invested and imbued in the creation. The time of exile, God is less involved. He's more withdrawn into himself, higher above. Yet every time we subdue the dark side, we trigger so high, and from the withdrawn heights, that light comes down. And it could be a lifetime of a tzaddik. A lifetime of a tzaddik of pumping mitzvahs and godliness into the world, bringing God's thoughts and speech and action into this world, cannot compare to the one powerful tsunami that a real tshuva affects. because it's touching levels that the tzaddik can't never ever get. That's the meaning. B'makom shebal tshuva oimdim. The place that the Bal Tshuva stands, which means the penitent reaches. The perfect tzaddik can't reach that place. It's a whole other level. So Shenestalik is explaining the concept of salik le'ela le'ela. By the way, this piece over here is the source. I'm not saying it's the only source, but it's definitely one of the sources for Basi Lagani. In the famous Maimer Basi Lagani, there he's explaining how the work in the Mishkan that we learn now, this is the season, we're beginning to prepare for Yud Shvat, and Yud Shvat is all about Basi Lagani. We're over there, it explains how to build the Mishkan. You have to use shitim wood. Shitim wood means you build it from shtus, from the Yetzahara, because the skafya sitra achar, because you have to subdue the other side, and when you subdue the other side, he brings the Zohar, istalik yakara the kutcha berichu le'ela. The God's glory rises above. And everybody understands this always to mean that God's glory rises above. But Chassidus says, and this is in the Rebbe's Maimer, when the Rebbe became Rebbe, the first parak of the Maimer, he's explaining this. That when it says istalik yakara the kutcha berichu, it does not mean, I'm trying to think if the Rebbe's first parak or the Friediger Rebbe's first parak in the Maimer, that it doesn't mean istalik, that he goes away. We don't want him to go away, rise above. It means the light that is in a state of aboveness, that light is drawn down. And that's the source of it is over here. He's saying over here that istalik yakar means that which is in a state of aboveness, and that which is a state of withdrawal, from the place of the withdrawal, it draws down. What does that mean? The revelation was retracted back into God's essence. And when it goes into God's essence, means into a non-defined, non-expressed, non-graspable state, it goes into a complete state of hiddenness, Hinei misham mamish, from its very elevated heights. While it is absorbed in the essence, from the essence we draw it down. When we draw it down with a chunk of the essence. That's the point. We draw the whole thing down. From that very high place should come the revelation. And the flow down. That's what the Bal Tshuva does, and the tzaddik doesn't do. The Alter Rebbe is just saying that realize that everybody can always do tshuva, because there's always moments you step away. So from the moment, take advantage of the stepping away moment and come back with an excitement, and that's gonna have this quality that the Bal Tshuva has that the tzaddik doesn't have. This idea of the power of the Bal Tshuva that comes from the darkness, comes from the interruption of the connection. That's the point. The reason the Bal Tshuva touches so high is because there is an intensity, there's a yearning. Because of the disconnect, there's a greater yearning. And that greater yearning is a stronger magnet, so it pulls from a higher place. This idea is going to explain is really the whole concept of exile. In the ultimate scheme of things, the reason there is always an exile is just to create the interruption so that we can have a return with a greater vigor, and we can pull God down from a higher place. That's the whole exile. And he says it happened twice in history. It happens all the time in the various levels, but in terms of general, twice. In the Egyptian exile was the first. That's this week's parsha. The Jewish people enter into exile. Jacob is blessing them before he passes away and coming into a dark period of 210 years of immense darkness. The reason, like, God is having such a beautiful relationship with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they finally have a family. Things are going good. Why mess it up? The answer is God says, there's no romance here. It's stale. I don't like it. I'm gonna make it dark and separate, and you're not gonna feel me. You're gonna go crazy in the darkness, and you're gonna yearn for me. And when you yearn for me, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna give you the Torah. And the Torah means I'm gonna give you myself, which I haven't given to the fathers, because they didn't have this level of yearning. And that lasted for about 1,000 years, the return of God to us. And then God says that was only a little trial. Now we're gonna do it much deeper. I'm going away for 2,000 years. I'm going to hide and hide and hide. And then I'm going to come back. But then it's going to be the real deal. Why? It's all about creating this tshuva experience. For behold, it says, speaks about the redemption of Mashiach, the incredible prophecies regarding the up and coming redemption. It says, as the days you went out of Egypt, I will show you wonders. And this is Torah. So what does it say? It's comparing the current redemption that we're going to experience any moment to the previous redemption. Just like in the days of Egypt, I showed you wonders, I will show you again wonders. The word wonders is the godliness that's above the creation. The infinite godliness. God as he is above the universe, above, that's called wonders. Because it's incomprehensible, it's unknowable, it's supernal darkness. It's above it all, it's a pella, it's the wonders, it's higher than the mind, higher than any conception. We will see it now like we saw it by Egypt. But the common denominator is they both come after a long period of concealment. Why do you need the concealment? Because you need to yearn for it to be able to connect it. Only the yearning and the darkness creates the space, which creates the intensity, the sizzle that is needed to create it. So every person has dark moments in their life on their own individual level, and then there is a communal experience where the entire world goes through the darkness as a preparation for the light. It's just like by the giving of the Torah. What was the main point of the giving of the Torah? An incredible intimacy, an incredible closeness. The Chsiv, it says, panim bepanim, face to face. Diber Hashem, God spoke way above him speaking to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This was so intimate, so powerful. Gili alakus lamata, there was a divine revelation below, b'pchinas panim, in a level of face. And face also means the innermost of God was revealed. In order for that to happen, the first there had to be a concealment of God, which was Golus Mitzrayim, the exile of Egypt. Ridu Shana, 210 years. In order that the Jewish people should cry out for revelation, which is what brought about there should be able to be face to face. Over there he explains, it's like, the example I love to give, and like that's why right seconds before the redemption it gets even darker. Over there he's explaining why next week's Torah portion, Shemos, it says right before the redemption, when Moshe comes already and reveals, it got so dark. And the water, and Moshe cries to God, why have you done bad to your people? Why have you done bad to your people? Moshe cries out to Hashem, why have you done bad to your people? And God says, now you will see. What's the answer? The Alter Rebbe, it doesn't literally, I think, I'm not sure if he says it, but it could be, but I remember when I taught this mimer way back still in Beis Betzalel and Pico, the example then, it was at the time when the tsunami happened in India, in Indonesia. Remember that story? So people were out there in the beach, and they were marveling at something amazing. They woke up in the morning and they saw that the beach was suddenly empty, and they saw fish laying in the sand, and they saw people went to resorts, these beautiful resorts that are right by the water, and take them in. And lo and behold, they didn't realize. Before the waters come out powerfully, they first recede very, very far back, and then the massive wave comes out like incredibly. So when God is coming to release a tsunami of divine revelation, there's first a powerful suction. This explains this year. Not just this year, it explains from 2020. COVID, this whole last 4 or 5 years, and I was warning, I was saying that 2020, I was saying, fasten your seatbelts. We're going to be going through. I didn't expect it to be so dark, but this is what we're expecting this year, especially Simchas Torah. It's like we spoke so much about Mashiach. Like, what's going on? Don't get fooled by the darkness. It's this powerful inhaling before the exhale is going to come, like never before. So we've had a terrible exile, and seconds before, the concealment becomes enormous. Nothing less than a concealment. Every day, soldiers were seeing faces of beautiful young men, sadly being killed. You wonder, where's God? Why? It bothers me so much. We learned today in Chumash that when the tribe of God would go out and fight, they all would come back. Not one of them would die. Today's Chumash, first right in the beginning. And why? Every day, the numbers keep on going higher and higher. It's divine concealment. Because we're so there. I hope God fills his lungs quickly. He doesn't have to go further in because we're had enough already. But this is the idea we're learning over here. And he says, and the same was also b'churban by its rishon. When the first temple was destroyed, then there was a short concealment, 70 years. But the main one is Visheni, and the second one, what goes on during the exile is that God retracts and removes his manifest presence from the world. And he retracts above Bibchinas Hester into a state of concealment. V'hakavana behester panim. What's the intention of the concealment? Hushiagoidel is pilus, that we should ache, that we should yearn. Because we don't have the light, we desire him so much. Lamaila above. Kamashala avim aben, like a father with a son. When the father wants to intensify the child's love to him, the father will play hide and seek. The father will hide, and the little child feels bewildered and scared, and they're running around crying for their father, and then the father comes out, and the child is like, wow, runs into the father's arms. When the father hides from the child, the child cries out to go up to his father. That's the will of the father, that the son should desire. The father sees the son is happy to see. What happens is the father sees that the 3-year-old is happy playing with his toys. The father knows that the 3-year-old can't be without the dad, but the child is distracted. He's not paying attention to the dad. But the dad wants that the child should play with him, should really be. So what does he do? He hides. The child gets terrified, cries, and when they see their Abba, their daddy, their father, they go running with such yearning, with such desire. And that was the reason the father hid in the first place. So the whole hiding is to get us to yearn with a deeper yearning. Now this has to be understood on a personal level, each and every one of us with God, and on a communal, collective level. Ayin b'Hisafis. Can't leave this one out. Let's see what he says over here in the Hisafis. So now he turns it back to a personal level. Same as also from the concealment that happens that in a person's own daily routine. That there is a time when you study Torah, and you pray and you're close. And then life is designed in a way that we have to break away from our connection to God to take care of our material needs. And that creates distance, and that creates separation and interruption. Al Yadeze, he is spileless. That creates a greater excitement, which in turn, Eskafya Sitra Achra, causes the other side to be broken. And the person awakens from the levels of God that have retreated above. That higher, deeper level should reveal itself below. And this is the meaning. I meet you outside. Outside means when you step away from me and you go outside of holiness. You go outside of divine consciousness. You go into a dark place. But then what happens when we meet outside, after you didn't see me? Then we experience a divine kiss. And what's the kiss? The kiss is when a Jew goes back to learning Torah after he's separated, he's not just speaking the words of God, he's kissing God with a passionate kiss. And in the passionate kiss, there's like a person passionately kissing another person, their spouse. The two souls, their energies, their spirit, their souls bond together, and they can't get enough of each other. And this is the idea that God says, it's nice when you learn Torah and you're speaking my words, but I don't want that. I want you to grab my mouth and kiss me with an intense kiss. That can only come when we're separated. And that's the meaning. When I meet you outside, eshakha. That's already a kiss. When you were outside, that's the Baal Tshuva. Ayin Pashas Achrei, Daf Ayin Ches, Moledes Bais, Moledes Chutz, Bepashas Terdes, Kuf Memalef, Bebeis Chachmas Bechutz, and the Belois Chashul Chagul. Okay. Vayedei Zenasa Eshakha. This creates a kiss. Chenes Neshikin, a kiss is Tapkis Rucha Berucha. It causes a spirit to cleave with each other. And therefore, when we say Baruch Ata Hashem, blessed are you, God, I am pulling you with all my energy. I want you so badly to reveal yourself to me. However, it doesn't have to be that it's two different modes. Till now we spoke, there's tzaddikim. Their quality is there is no peace in their life that they're standing outside. Everything in their life is consistent with divine flow. And then there are, but they're lacking the excitement, the deeper excitement. Then there are the Baal Tshuvas, the people who wander off, and they have intense returns, but they're lacking the consistency. And this is what King Solomon is saying in the Song of Songs, if only you can be like my brother, and also I can meet you outside. If only we can have both together. Yetencha Ke'ach Li, you can be like my brother. And that I meet you outside. To have them both simultaneously. There should be the attachment of the tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva, of the perfectly righteous and the Baal Tshuva. How can it be both? It doesn't only mean that there should be a community of both. That's one level. The Jewish people have both. But on a deeper level is that every person has both. Like the statement of the Zohar says, Asid Mashiach, the quality of what Mashiach is going to do, Mashiach is going to cause tzaddikim to turn around and to do tshuva. Mashiach is going to cause tzaddikim to experience tshuva on the highest level. Ukatzas Chazal, unlike the advice of the sages, kol yamav b'tshuva, that a person all their life should be in tshuva. That means tshuva is not a one-time event after you've been distant, but all your life. That means even if you're a tzaddik and everything, you can still do tshuva. Dahainu. What does that mean? Shekam tzaddik yasa tshuva. That the tzaddik should also do tshuva. How can that be? Dahainu ama shelo haya bittul kol kach. See, a tzaddik is in a constant state of surrender and nullification to God, so he's always attached. But within that surrender, there are moments in which it's more intense and moments that it's a little more superficial. And on those moments where the bittul is a little more superficial, a little more external, because they're not so deeply focused, for that they can do tshuva. In other words, more subtle, but that too can be considered a distance. Like during prayer, their connection is deeper than when they're not praying. So during the time that they're not praying, and when they come back in prayer, they feel like a Baal Tshuva as well. And now you reach that level of bittul. Zahu tshuva shaloi. This is the tshuva of the tzaddik. And now he's going to explain the last words of the Zohar. Of the verse. The verse says, I'll meet you outside. Gam lo yavuzu li. They also will not plunder me. What does that mean? As a result of this combination of the tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva joining together, then I will not be plundered anymore. What does that mean? With all the divine flow of energy flowing into the universe, there is always a problem. And that is that some of the energy gets usurped by the unholy. That has always been the problem. We channel godly light, but that which is wicked and evil in the world also gets some of the crumbs. And they thrive as well. It's always dangerous when you're bringing in a flow, a infusion, it might go into the wrong places. So he says an amazing thing. When you only have the service of the Baal Tshuva, Baalei Tshuva for themselves, or the service of tzaddikim by themselves, in both cases there could be a yenikas achitzonim, a flow of energy to the wrong side. But when you join both of them together, the tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva together, that creates a certain dynamic that clogs all the holes. And the reason for that is, doesn't explain too much. I'm going to give my part of it I did see, and part of it I'm giving my own interpretation. It says in Chassidus, in many places, we learned that there are two places where there is a leak, where the divine energy flows down the wrong channels. One is from the very, very bottom of the chain. As God infuses life to the worlds of holiness and the entities of holiness, holy angels, celestial beings, and so on. And then at the time of the temple, for instance, the energy flows to the temple, to the Jewish people. And then from there, it starts to trickle out to the world until it gets to the real dark places in the world. That's called from the bottom, from the end to end of the chain. That's one place they take from. Another place they can take from is they circumvent the entire chain and go to the infinite. Because the infinite level is indiscriminate. Because God is still aloof and not so particular about the creation, because he's not interested, so to speak. He's above it all. If they can somehow climb up high, and there are methods that they have, proven methods of how do they get up there, they can kind of stick their antennas in on that high place and take from that infinite source. And therefore, when the tzaddik does his service, and the tzaddik causes an increased influx of divine flow flowing into the world, It's flowing through the system. That's the whole point we learned that tzaddik does. He brings God into the manifest system. So it's great, and holiness is enriched, but there's more energy that will also flow to the unholy. True, they're getting from the bottom, but the bottom will also have a lot. If there's such an intense flow, even the farthest places will get a lot. So they will also be intense. So there is a downside to the energy, to the Torah and mitzvahs that we bring into the world, because even that can cause Yetencha Ke'ach Li. Especially if the tzaddik does even the tiniest little miss thing that causes leakages in these flow. That makes it even worse. Now, the Balchuvas don't cause this leakage down here below, because they don't draw down that much. The reason they don't draw down because they don't have those channels built. But the Balchuvas intensify the energy above the shtalshalos, above creation. They create a storm up there of divine excitement. So there's spillover from above the whole system. And that can even be even a bigger mess. So each one has its possibility for Yetencha Ke'ach Li. But when you combine tzaddik and Balchuva, you're protected. Why? Because when the divine essence that the Balchuva shakes up is drawn down here through the tzaddik, because the tzaddik is also doing tshuva. So he's triggering the Ein Sof, but he's funneling him into the system. When God himself is present in the world, and it's not just his energy, not just his flow, number one, it's not from up there, it's cut off. Why is it cut off from up there? Because it's not being left up there it's not like a storm being left, an energy, an intense, powerful energy that doesn't have direction. The tzaddik is channeling it down, and it's flowing through the channels of holiness. So it's not unprotected energy that was just created up there, that if it's just floating in the cosmos somewhere, that they can stick their antennas in or plug into it. You can't. So you're avoided when the tzaddik is taking the tshuva energy and flowing it into the tzaddik world. There's no Yetencha Ke'ach Li from above. There's also no Yetencha Ke'ach Li from below, because it's only when there is a measured flow that measured flow eventually flows out. But when it's Hashem himself coming down, the klippas can't touch it. Something like that. Let's see if we and through this year kol dinin misabramina, all judgments, which means all unholiness, all negativity will be removed from her. She'ein shum achiza lechitzainim, there is no grasp for the chitzonim, for the external forces. Gam lo yavuzu li, they can't rob me anymore. K'maimer Exile, and as the sages say, im Yisrael oisim tshuva nigalim. If the Jewish people, and when the Jewish people do tshuva, we are redeemed. The redemption involves the drawing of God down into the world, the home in this world, and also that the unholy has become deactivated, because they have no more energy anymore. She'ikara hester, because their main power is machmas the istala kutshaberichu liela. The main concealment is because God is, in general, not just when they have power. The reason there is concealment during exile is because God is above the world. He's hidden. He retracted him to himself. And valyadeya tshuva, and through the tshuva, ma'oideli says galus lamata. Tshuva draws God down to be revealed below. Umemela negolim. And that's why it also says, Utshuva, Utfila, Utzedaka. Tzedakah is tzaddik and tshuva. Tefillah and tzedakah is tzaddik. Tshuva is the Baal Tshuva. And it's both. Mavir and Esraya Agzera. We say it on Rosh Hashanah. What's that remove the badness of the decree? What's the badness of the decree? The exile. Tshuva, it's the unification of tshuva and tefillah and tzedakah. The tzaddik doing tshuva all together. The tzaddik and the Baal Tshuva together. Which isn't the case when each one is standing individually. When they're all individual, then we don't have the same kind of a power. There's this channel and there's that channel, but it's not bringing it all down from the highest, deepest place, fully manifest down here without the possibility of any leakages happening. With this, we conclude this very special and beautiful Maimer. Okay. Stay tuned. Next week is going to be really special because it's going to be Thursday night. It's going to be the Alter Rebbe's Yortzeit, the day of the passing of the Alter Rebbe. And we hope to be learning something very special and maybe doing a special Farbrengen. We'll see how we'll make it happen. So make sure to tune in next week, Thursday night, to the channel. Everybody be well.